Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. I know you know that already, but I just love saying it because it reminds me of how grateful I am to be sitting in this chair. Folks, when we made the move to 5 days a week, you all showed up like crazy, just like crazy. You came out, you subscribed, you shared, you did everything you could. You helped us make the move to 7 days. And this past week, we actually made the move to 7 days a week. Folks, it's amazing what we're doing over here, and we're doing it all because of you. If you're not doing what you're doing out there, I don't get to sit here and do what I'm doing over here. So eternally grateful. And if you folks have been around for a little while, and I think you probably have, then you know what we got to do right now, which is pay a couple of bills. So let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Oh man, that's good stuff. Deep, dark, rich, bold, beautiful. Just like my wife. Absolutely, positively fantastic cup of coffee. It's a mean bean. It's a fantastic brew. They do all the right things for all the right reasons, and they support veterans. You guys all know how important that is to us here at the Power Man Podcast. Folks, for all of you out there who are veterans, thank you for your service, and you know that we love you. Check them out. Freedom Hill Coffee, at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up, check them out, tell them, hey, Power Man sent you. I'm going to get one more sip of this so I can keep up with this, young buck on the other side of the table.
Oof. Oof.
Hey, compared to me, brother. All right. So please welcome to the show the founder of the Captain's Club, a boutique executive search firm. I'm going to let him tell you all about that. Please welcome Daniel Cheetham. Dan, how you
Awesome.
doing?
I'm great. I'm great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Do you go by Dan or Daniel? I should ask you that in the
Daniel.
Daniel, you
Daniel.
got it. All right. Daniel, I tell you what, I know we've got several things we want to talk about today, but just to kind of get us rolling, tell my audience, who is Daniel Cheetham? What are you about? What brings you here today, brother?
Man. Yeah. Well, one, as I said, super appreciative of having me on. Excited to tell a little bit of my learnings and stories. Um, a little bit earlier on in my career than you are, but I think I'm doing the best I can, being just intentional every day. So, just as a quick background, originally from I was born in Texas, so I say I'm Texan, but I was only there for about a year before I moved to Seattle. I grew up in Seattle. Absolutely hate the rain. Undergrad, grad school, all that sort of fun stuff. Mother was an immigration attorney. Father worked in mechanical contracting, and never really knew what I wanted to do. I think I was always, buying and selling things and working on cars and that sort of stuff. So I started my career being forced to go to college for construction management. And then I actually came out to Arizona to go to a Mariners spring training game, and had a beer, called my dad and said, I'm not coming home. This is the best place on earth. And that was in March. And then reality hit when I got down here in August for school. So it was about 122 degrees, still here in Arizona after all these years. But yeah, undergrad, grad school, did a master's of science in design, which is a lot of like design thinking, qualitative research methods, expensive procrastination, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
So I had to start getting paid. And through that journey, I started in recruiting, and I absolutely loved it. Small Microsoft consulting companies that rolled up to a Fortune 500 business, left, went to a VC-backed software company, leading product recruiting, and then into executive search. So the small business or the VC-backed software business was called Infusionsoft. They were sort of the first small business marketing automation CRM platform. And when you walked in every day, had this huge sign on the wall that said, "We empower entrepreneurs." And that was my first glimpse into entrepreneurship, founders, the challenges they face. And it really just seeded that passion. I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family at all. So with that and talking to these people, I was like, man, I can do this. So I got a little hot headed and I left to try and start my first recruiting business. Realized business development is a thing, and kind of went
Yeah.
with my tail between my legs to executive search firms here in Arizona, asking for rev splits and stuff like that. So one of those companies opened up their wings, said, "Come, we'll give you a salary." So I was working for the man once again, but that was an incredible business still around, a very purpose-driven executive search firm called Y Scouts under the tutelage of Max Hansen and Brian Moore. I learned a lot. I spun up our practice. I was head of search there, and then got the twinge again to start a business. A little context in my life at the time. Uh, I was recently married, and I was like, oh, I probably have a couple years before we start having kids. So I turned in my notice, and then 2 weeks later, my wife came into my office in the morning with a pregnancy test, and I was like, oh shit, shoot, it's got to work.
You're
It
okay.
really has to work. So with that, heads down, really grinding for the first year and a half till my first son was born. And now that's what my business does, Captain's Club. We hire second in command, COO, president, succession type searches for owner operated businesses. Built out a proven process to do that. And it's so fun. I get to work with people more courageous, smarter, more daring, more squirrely, than I am every day, and help. My stakeholder really is their leadership team, their employees, and their customers more so than them. And I say that right out of the gate. And if we can get the right operator, true executive in to help unlock them from their business, then everyone benefits. So, yeah. Outside of that, I said 3-year-old, 10-month-old, and a very loud house at this point.
Nice. Hey, that was you unpacked so much and like boom, boom, boom. I just love it. I'm over here like checking boxes, making notes,
All right.
and
Sorry about that. Yeah.
no, no, I love it. It was great because it was just it was hey, here's who I am.
Cool.
A couple of things. It was interesting, like you said, that you come from a family of folks who clock in, clock out, go to work, get the paycheck, and then you come along and you start the entrepreneurial thing before you really have experience in that business. You just said, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and then it doesn't work as well as you'd hoped. You go into the business to learn it, then come back out and go, "All right, now I got this," and so
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. Is that kind of how it went
Yeah.
down?
Yeah, you could say so. I had never really worked on the agency side of recruiting. So in recruiting, there's really three types. And so you have what's called a corporate or in-house recruiter. If you apply to a position, the corporate recruiter takes the resume, asks you some qualifying questions, and maybe hopefully advances you to go talk to a hiring manager. You have agency or contingent recruiting, where outside staffing agencies basically get paid a percentage of your salary. Say it's a 25% commission if they go out and find someone that's usually a harder to fill role. Or may have more domain expertise. And then you have a retained executive search, which is flat fee. You sort of get rid of the agent principal problem and say, hey, it's going to cost this much, flat fees. It's a $45,000 search or $60,000 search or $80,000 search to say, we're going to go find a, 2, 3, 400K executive to join your team. And we're not getting paid more if they cost more, where you need someone who's going to stay here for at least 12 months that is going to really drive the results you're looking for. I didn't know any of this. I just left my job, my salaried position, and be like, oh, I'm going to start a recruiting firm after watching some YouTube videos that hyped me up a little too much. And yeah, it lasted about 3 months before I realized that I wasn't equipped, not only with the skill set, but the mindset to really service clients the way they should be. So
Interesting.
that's where I went into the business. Yeah.
Interesting. So I am curious then, where does the entrepreneurial drive come from? It didn't come from mom and dad, of course. Although maybe it did, and that's just what they are doing to pay the bills. Maybe they really are entrepreneurs, who knows? But you've got it from someplace. Was
Yeah.
it a dream? Is it a want? Is it a desire? What made you say, I'm not doing the 9 to 5. I'm gonna go, jump off a bridge and do this myself, like that?
Yeah. So I read a lot, or I like to when I have the time, but uh, Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self-Reliance essay, I think was one of those Quake books or Quake, pieces of content that I digested when I was like 18 or 19. And it's really just like trust thyself, kind of really being self-reliant.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was always in my head of like, hey, there's a way where I can kind of create the future I want for myself. And maybe, getting a little bit more vulnerable. My parents both were very stressed out. They were, 7 to 7 workers, both had fulfilling careers for sure. But there wasn't a lot of control of their time. And I think as I left, I was like, all right, for my future family, I want to have a little bit more ownership and autonomy when it comes to who and why I spend my time with people. So that
Got it.
was that was a big motivating factor too. I loved my family, were great, but I think I saw a different side of like workaholism, or like of like, hey, someone else has asked me to be here, so I got to be here. Versus, I'm doing this, not I should, not I have to, but like I'm choosing to do X, Y, or Z. So that was a big push for me.
Nice. When people get into entrepreneur, ventures, usually there's one or the other causal factors. It's either money driven. I want unfettered earnings. I want to be able to go make what I got to make. It's all about me. Or there's the case of, I'm tired of X. I don't want to be, Y. So I'm going to go for Z, which usually is quality of life type of thing. Sounds like you were more the latter and that money wasn't really the driving thing. It was about quality of life.
Yeah, I think so. I grew up in relatively in a fortunate family, relatively well-off family, given how hard my parents worked. But I also was fortunate enough to it's a place called Mercer Island, Washington. It's a pretty ritzy spot, but I saw a lot of kids that were raised on money and not necessarily respect or temperance or courage. And so, I mean, it was great, but I think I kind of got to see that side of it. And I was like, hey, if all the money in the world doesn't mean much if I'm not raising a great family unit and giving back to my community. And so I don't think it was really the driving force. And I think you're correct in quality of life. But I also think you need to be really intentional about what is a quality of life to you, right? Like it's different to everyone. And so what does that mean? What does the balance or integration look like? So yeah, I'll take path Z any day.
Right, right. I like that. Now, when you kind of trace your timeline, you didn't know that you were getting ready to have a family when you decided to go out and be the entrepreneur, right?
Correct.
Okay, so that was a surprise.
Yeah,
Um,
we knew it was in the cards, but it wasn't, she wasn't pregnant when I said I was going to start a business. We'll say
sure.
that.
Now, all my kids are grown, so I'm an empty nester. But man, I,
Yeah.
I remember I was an entrepreneur when they were born. So I absolutely remember the mindset and what was going through that brain of mine
Yeah.
at the time. What changed for you? And maybe many things, but what changed for you when you found out you were having a family versus when you actually had the family?
Yeah.
Those are two very different milestones. It's, hey, we're going to have a family. And then you start to make changes. And then it's, we have the family. Wow. So,
Yeah.
what changed for you, man?
Big change of pace there. So, with before, I think before, kind of just trying to reflect where I was at, everything was very exciting and fresh. And this is when rates were really low. Took a cash out refi on our house, so I had 50K liquid, to start the business, man, rolling in dough. And so for me, I was like, look, if it doesn't work in a year, and I made a video about this, going on a walk, like the day that I put in my notice that morning. And I was like, look, I'm going on this journey, not necessarily to make money or for it to be successful, but to become a different version of myself. Someone who placed a bet and followed it through. And if it doesn't work, fine, I can always go back and get a job. So that was my mentality of like, oh, I'm just doing this as an experiment for personal growth. Once my son arrived, his name's August or Augie. When Augie came into the world, that first week was just crazy. Like I woke up half on the couch at like 3 p.m. Not, I was like, what day is it? All this sort of stuff. Um, but as he started, kind of getting into routine and rhythm, and we started finding our identity as a family of three versus a couple, it became a big motivating factor to not only generate income for our family, but to build something like if you ask Augie what I do, he's three, but he says I do meetings and I send emails, right? It's kind of what he says, and it I want to look back on this time and say, oh, if I'm away from my kids and away from my wife, I want it to be time well spent. So for me, it became a little bit more purposeful of looking at all the stakeholders, sort of that conscious capitalism mentality of like, hey, we're not just here to turn profits. That's important, but the community, the employees' families, like we're doing this and it impacts a lot of different people. So I think it just changed the lens on which I view my work and why I work a lot.
Nice, nice. I
Now
mean,
the
that's to be
second piece,
expected. Yeah,
firstborn is one thing. Secondborn, how many
uh,
you said you have three?
I have three. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Secondborn, like firstborn, mom is really, you're there to make sure mom's okay, and really she's set up for success. You're doing the bottles, like all that sort of stuff. When the second one comes, that's out the window. There's no free weekends. There's no free afternoons. Like there's no time. I wasn't prepared for that. The number two is exponential, or at least was for our family. And God bless my wife. But when we had the second one, it was a very stark, like, oh, there's no working before or after after office hours. Weekends, you're not trying to send emails. Like it's really dedicated to the family. So that was a big
So
change.
changed even more with the second one. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you guys didn't exactly wait. It was like, boom, then boom.
Yeah, I think we're done, man. We're tapping out at this point. As much as we would like it, I think, for my wife, it was a relatively difficult, pregnancy and birth. She's a high risk birth and things like that. So I think we're just counting our blessings with two healthy
Mm.
boys. There's not much more I could ask for.
Yeah.
I used to say that boys are better men if they have sisters. Uh, and my wife, I think you have a perspective. I had a sister. Maybe I was a little biased, but my wife's like, you got to stop saying that now, man. Like you can't say that to the boys. So
If that's all you have, that phrase needs to go out the window. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
exactly right. Well, congratulations to you guys on your boys and your
Thank you.
family, and blessings. I'm glad that your wife is okay, made it through the
Mhm.
births and stuff. So, congrats on that too. High risk stuff's nothing to shake a stick at. That had to
Yeah,
be interesting for you.
yeah, yeah. It is. It's interesting. As you start getting a little bit older, um, you start getting exposed to reality a lot more. You hear kind of more, I don't say like horror stories, but tragedies. Um, People in your life start passing. And so like you just become so grateful and I guess so aware of the potential consequences of things, especially when you have a family,
Yeah,
So I think that really solidifies it. But yeah, we feel just so grateful and they're funny and healthy and happy and eat and sleep and all that good stuff. So it's good.
wonderful. Did you feel like you were ready to be a father?
Yeah, I think so. I was ready. I was ready to experience fatherhood, right? I think I've done a lot of work over the years to try and be the best man I can be, and I had a good example of a father as well. He didn't have that great of an example of a father, so he was working on it all the time. But we've become really good friends now. And it was interesting. We on Father's Day, I took him to a Mariner spring training game, and then we went and had lunch. And he was like, it's important. This is the first time he said it. He's like, it was important for you to be scared of us, be scared of me. And I was like, interesting. So this was intentional, going through it. And it wasn't like, of course, respect, but he's like, a little fear is good, and going through that. And so I'm starting to look at my father through a different lens, and now almost more of a shepherd of his stage of life versus, he was a shepherd of mine for a long time. So I think a lot of perspectives are changing now. But to get back to your question, I wandered off a bit. I was really hopeful I'd be a good father, and I was ready for the challenge.
No, I love that. I really do. You mentioned something else in there, and I kind of picked up some of that in your bio. I think it's one of the reasons why I was really intrigued to talk to you because you just mentioned that you did what you could to be a better man, and that
Yeah.
that was something that was important to you prior to all of this. That has a lot of different definitions to a lot of different people, of course. I mean, especially over the last say 6 years.
Yeah.
But I think that your definition rings very closely with mine and with my listeners. Um, if you don't mind me asking you, and I am putting you right on the spot. So I
All
mean,
right.
no prep for this question at all, brother. But what does that mean to you if you think you can put it into words? Working on being a better man.
Yeah. So there, the poem "If" by Rudyard Kipling, I think, does a pretty good job of nailing it. If you're familiar with that or not, but I read it to
Vaguely,
my son.
like I feel
Uh,
like I can remember a line or something out of it, but
Okay.
vaguely
Yeah, it starts if you can keep your head when all around you are losing theirs and
losing
blaming it
theirs.
on you. If you
Okay.
can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowances in their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired of waiting, or be lied about, not deal in lies, or be hated, don't give way to hating, yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, think and not make thoughts your aim. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. If you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or see the work you give your life to broken and stoop and build them up with. And so it's along those lines. I kind of flipped it, but I read it to my sons every night, and it is pretty impactful. And I think just to reflect on those things, I believe being a good father or being a good man aligns with we're not a very religious family. I was raised Jewish, but I think the Stoic virtues of like temperance justice, courage, those things I think really go far. And so trying to model those behaviors as much as I can every day is really important. Um, I think being a good husband is the best way to be a good father. Also, and so just to set that example too. So working on my relationship with my wife, since we got married, on the first Friday of every month, we go to breakfast. We call it First Friday breakfast, and I have an agenda, and it's basically a review of the month, health, wealth, um, fitness, which is basically more along the lines of like uh, um, physical and mental on that side of things, family, which is like chores, and then we plan out and kind of do the review ahead of time. And uh, to me, it's just being really intentional about our relationship as the pinnacle, and then letting that set the example for our kids.
Nice. I like your definition, and kudos on the poem because wow, I mean you got through almost all of it. Isn't there like just this much left at the end of that thing?
Yeah, yeah. If I had a
It's pretty
refresher, I could
good.
do it again. But yeah,
No, that was amazing, and that wasn't even prepped. That was just like out of the blue. You knew that coming
well,
through. That's pretty good.
and so towards the end of the song, it goes, uh, what was it? So it goes, filling with thirst. The last stanza. If you can walk with crowds and keep your virtue, talk with kings nor lose your common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, and if all men count on you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything in it. And what's more, you'll be a man, my son. And then when it gets to my son says, my son, like really excited before bed. And that just lights me up. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times also being, intentional living, intentionally spending the time. The Just for people who don't necessarily know what that means or understand what it means to you, what does that mean to you? Intentional living, being intentional with your time, intentional in raising your kids.
Yeah. Yeah, just like that little poem example is one thing about being. You could do story time, you can read books, but having little traditions that have a lesson in them, I think, is really important. Um, when I when I come home every day, I put my phone from five. So the rule is like from 5 to 7, right? So from 5 to 7, my phone goes in a bowl next to the front door on airplane mode. And then from 5 to 7, when I come home, that's dinner time, that's family time. There's no checking anything or responding to calls. So that 5 to 7 is important. And then my wife has joined in on that. So it's really nice to just start these little rituals that have a lesson in there. So I think that's part of the intentionality behind it. Um, as we go through and like my sister lives in North Carolina. She has 3 kids. My parents are getting older. And so my sister and I talk a lot about like, what do we want our relationship to be? And carving that out. How do we actualize that? So we go on a beach trip every year and we're committed to doing it every year and budgeting for it every year. So these sorts of things where you just like, hey, these are our values. This is what my future self would like to look back on and have happen. And then committing to it in little bite-sized chunks in any way you can. So that's what I view as intentional, right? Or at least just intentional existence. So
Nice. Nice. Where did you come up with this then? I mean, because you just mentioned like, the Stoics, and
mhm.
that sort of thing. And you're talking about, intentional living. You're talking about being a better man.
Yeah.
Is there an influence in there somewhere where you picked all this up, or was it just from reading things like, the poem and stuff like that? Anything else that maybe sort of found its way into you from the outside?
Yeah. I would say I had an event. So this was 2009. New Year's. I was with a girl I was with at the time, and there was a breaking and entering into our apartment. And basically, I fought back. I was hospitalized, like plates in my face, all sorts of stuff. And I think that's when I really started picking up. I won't say ancient knowledge, but like reading Marcus Aurelius's meditations, trying to think through a little bit about, that was a close call, I had brain swelling, my eye socket, all sorts of stuff. So to me, it was, I think that was a quake moment of like, look, things are going to be different from here on out, on my end. So I think that coupled with my dad has always had just a relentless curiosity and is reading everything. Like right now, he's reading like Civil War journals, like the raw Civil War journals, just because it's fascinating. It's like what these guys go through and stuff. And I think it just shows you appreciation and gratitude for your place in life and everything that you do have. And it's all been rooted in gratitude, I think, on my eyes.
Wow. I was sensing that there was, something that kind of weighed on you. I had no idea. And so, I mean, I apologize for, bringing that up
Oh, yeah,
like that. I don't want to reopen old wounds or anything. I really didn't know.
yeah, yeah,
But I appreciate you sharing that, with
you
everybody.
bet.
That had to be ridiculously traumatic.
Yeah, it was wild. It was. I mean, there's kind of a whole story that goes along with it. But yeah, we were in our apartment. It's 11 o'clock at night, and there's a knock on the door. Open it up, and the door just busted open. Three guys came in and gave enough. I fought back enough to get my the girl so she could lock herself in our bedroom. But yeah, it was pretty bad. And with that, I think one of the hard parts is I was out in Arizona alone. I had friends and stuff out here, but like my parents were back in Washington. And so my dad flew out, and it was very emotional in a hospital bed, and so I think that was something that just I think shook me a little bit and being like, look, uh, you gotta if you're gonna be moving forward here, like it starts in gratitude and it starts in appreciation and giving back and being intentional and being a good man. So I think that's where it comes from.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I would think you'd come out of that really just kind of grateful for every minute that you have. That's
Could have
amazing.
could have been a lot worse, you
Sure.
know.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah. Well, wow, brother. I mean, power to you for getting through that,
yeah.
and for being able to talk about it, even like this. Is that something that you talk about, often?
Uh, I would say the only time I talk about it is when I go to the dentist because they do x-rays and I have plates right here. And then there's a
Oh,
plate that's kind of a Y that goes from the middle of my forehead down on each side of my nose. And so when they do that, they always ask what happened. And that's usually when I talk about it. And I just kind of brush it off on that sense. But, I don't, not necessarily like my wife knows and now your audience knows, I guess.
yeah.
But it's something I kind of packaged away a little bit and just move forward from. But yeah, I think, as I reflect back and probably in 10 years from now, I'll look back again and be like, man, I can't believe it's been what, 15 years, 16, almost 16 years since that happened. I went to ASU. My math doesn't math all the time. So, but I think that's right around where it was. Um, but looking
Gotcha.
back and now as we're talking about this, I think you can always kind of connect the dots more in hindsight,
Right.
than looking forward. So probably.
Nice. How did that whole thing impact, where you are now with your wife and with your kids and how you act with your family now?
Yeah. I really haven't had the time to reflect on that, man. We've been moving really fast the last 5 years. Um, if I was to say, how does that impact how I've shown up for my kids? I really want them to be able to protect themselves. Um, and so upper middle class white Jewish kid from Seattle, like not a big fighter,
Right. Yeah.
had a couple scraps, I earned my stripes in college, but just to be able to defend yourself, and not only that, just be aware. Like for me, the best way to survive a confrontation is never get in one and just be really aware and take it on yourself to protect yours and others. And so I think that's a lesson that I'll probably teach them a little bit later on in life. But for me, I feel really lucky, man. I don't know how else to say it. I just feel really lucky to have an amazing supporting wife, two boys, that I have the honor to hopefully be a good guide and coach through this crazy thing called life. So yeah, I'm just appreciative.
Yeah. Quite the story, brother. Seriously. And glad you made it through. Glad you're doing what you're doing now.
Yeah.
But I understand a few things about you a little bit better now, kind of knowing that too, to be completely honest. Since the beginning of our interview, you've sort of had this, I don't want to say it's a sense of urgency, but a presence and a knowledge that, hey, you know what? There may not be a tomorrow. You know what I mean? We got to go out and we got to do this now. We got to take care of this stuff now. You can't just put stuff off. So let's go make the most of today, and that grateful thing.
Yeah.
I think I understand a little better where that comes from, now, which is awesome. And
Cool.
it's a good thing that you have. right now. So, well, let's get you off of that one, and I apologize because
All good. All
I
good.
there was no warning on that. I didn't even know, but I wanted to ask you a question about the business too. You know, we're
Sure.
rolling our time down a little bit, and you've really brought a lot to the table about talking about fatherhood and your kids and everything else. But
Cool.
I want to make sure I talk about your business a little too because I'm curious about a couple of things. You note that you specialize in finding second in command to founder-led companies. Now, to me, now I'm not in the employment space, of course, but to me, that seems like a serious niche to be working within. What brought you to that, and what's the benefit of working in that particular spot?
Yeah, it's a horrible business model. To tell you the truth, I can't tell, a lot of coaches and outside consultants are like, you got to specialize, you got to niche down, and they're probably right. Uh, and the reason I focus on this, one, it's extremely fulfilling. Two, I feel like I'm really good at it, and track record has kind of spoken for itself when it comes to that. And where a lot of people talk. So here's a typical situation I run into. So I come into a business or someone gets introduced and says, "Hey, Steven's ready to bring on a chief operating officer. He's the president of XYZ services company." All right, interesting. So we have a conversation, and it's really unpacking who that person is, why they think they're ready to do this, are the pieces in place to do this. And they've either tried before and failed on their own. They either have nowhere to start or don't know where to start in hiring someone, or it's a succession hire where you have a 70, 75-year-old that has built an amazing team. The company isn't maybe not sellable to private equity, nor do they want to have a big exit. They actually care about their team, their leadership, et cetera. The controller or their office manager has been there for 20 years, right? They don't want private equity to come in and buy up their book of business and reduce duplication of efforts and, okay, let's say pump value into their business. So I come in a bunch of different scenarios, but I love it because it gets open and real pretty quick as to what are they challenged with, what do they absolutely despise doing, what do they love doing in their business, why did they start the business to begin with, where do they feel alive, where do they feel fulfilled, and then we craft out, I call it navigating talent, and so it's the head, the heart, the helm. So a lot of people say, oh, we benchmark a position and we take a behavioral assessment to see if they fit. That's part of it. The most important part is benchmarking the founder, the owner of the business, and then we look at the person's behavioral profile and where are their friction points, where do they light up, and really understanding that dynamic first and foremost. The second piece is heart, and so that's shared beliefs, core values, personal mission of what they want to accomplish in their life, what do they want their legacy to be, and then helm is it doesn't need to be industry specific, but have they been on the journey from 15 to 50 million in revenue? Or have they led a team of 25 people that was recently downsized? Have they felt the pressures and the challenges of some of these very, unique business situations to see if we can get a really high vote of confidence that this person's going to be successful in filling this gap on the team. Most of the time it comes down to leadership of people and culture, ensuring operational excellence and driving sustainable growth. Those are usually the core drivers. How that's done through what tactics and strategies is different. But I would say about 85% of the placements I make actually come from outside the industry that they're going into. So
Really?
for me, that's what I love to do. If I get a thank you from a direct report of the person that I place versus I get thank yous from the founder, all that sort of stuff. But when I get a thank you from someone that was like, hey, I'm really happy I'm not reporting to Steven anymore. Eric is amazing. Our team's banging on all cylinders. We got the right leadership. That to me is the most fulfilling thing. So that's why I do it.
Wow. So, I mean, are you a one man show doing all this? Do you have a team working for you, pulling together information and on everybody? And how's that work?
Yeah. So this is what's been interesting. When I started the business, and then after my first son was born, I was like, all right, back to reality. Now's the time to grow. Had some money, in the coffers, and was going to deploy capital to grow. Hired a couple people, launched got HubSpot up and running, all this sort of stuff. And then we found out we were pregnant again. And I was like, man, I don't know how many licks I can take here. So leading people is difficult. and especially your first and second hires. That's really tough. And so for me, I had some great people on the team, but I just didn't have enough gas in the tank to be like, this is the time to grow this business. And what I also realized is the reason why some other executive search firms don't necessarily function that well is you have what's called the agent principal problem. So if someone sells the business, oh yeah, we can fill that role. We've done it a million times. Let's have Susie on our team do it. Susie's incentives and understanding of promise and understanding of commitments and the data transfer, there's just stuff that happens between there versus if I'm working with the founder and we decide to work together, I'm committed to making you successful. It's a mutually committed relationship. And so I feel like I can be a lot more effective one-on-one. I'd rather work with 5 or 6 clients in a year versus, 15, 20, maybe one day, man, and that whole make more money and be unlocked from the business. I've seen it happen because that's what I do. But for me at this stage of my life, it's not for me. I really love being a one-man band. I have some amazing tools to do research. I have some offshore that I can leverage if I need to. But my goal would to be hire here in my neck of the woods, in my neighborhood. Some boots on the ground, real American employees, and grow the business that way. So that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Sounds like this type of business would be very heavy in the networking and referral, type of area in terms of it really does matter who you know and what contacts you have. Am I
Yeah.
guessing that correctly? And how have you handled that?
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to like scale sales and marketing for a business like this,
Yeah.
for like B2B high ticket sales, if you want to call it that, or high impact deliveries, it's tough. Like not a lot of people just go on the website and be like, oh, I'll submit and go through this. It doesn't happen, right? So what happens is I've been very involved in like Vistage and Entrepreneurs Organization. But man, I'll tell you, the best sense of referrals is just trying to be valuable to people. So, a chief operating officer who's looking for an opportunity right now, I'd love to spend 30 minutes, understand their journey, see if I can connect them with someone that may not even be hiring, but give them resources and help them on their way. And I feel if I can continue just to give value, then you plant a lot of seeds, over the years and things start popping up. So just got a referral yesterday from someone I've known for about 6 years, who one of their clients is looking to hire a chief operating officer, president of their business, and it was like, hey, Daniel's the person you need to talk to. So
Nice.
as long as I can do good by people, then I think it'll come back around.
And how
That
long?
might that might be a terrible strategy now I'm talking about it. So who knows?
My first question, how long have you been doing this again?
4 years now. Yeah,
Four
it'll be
years.
4 years next month.
Okay. All right. And then the second question is, at every turn, you seem to be saying things like, it's the worst business plan in the world. I don't know how this is working, that type of thing. How has it changed, from year one to year four? Things getting a
Yeah,
little bit easier now, you getting more established. I mean, or is it still, a fight and prospecting and,
yeah,
clawing?
yeah. It's I would say it's still a fight. I think every day is, sometimes you have, and people are funny. Recruiting is one of the hardest businesses. When I was introduced to it, Ari, my first kind of like recruiting mentor, I come in on my first day and like, all right, you're gonna job shadow Ari. Ari has a spitter, he has a full dip, he has a spitter cut, he has his headset on, he's laughing, he's juicing up his client and stuff and talking. And he goes, I have to tell you about recruiting. So imagine you're selling TVs at Best Buy, but the TV just decides to jump out of the car on the way home. And then you get a call that they're pissed that the TV jumped out and you got to get a new TV for them and all this sort of stuff. So it's tough because you're selling on both sides, something that they can't touch, feel, see, and they're just hoping works. And so the more clarity, the more consistency, the more expectation management we can do there, the better. But it's really tough. And I think it has to be. I don't think there's an easy way to match up people long term. Uh, I keep saying like, it's a bad business model. Business is steady, and I think that's fine. I have more security now where I can say no to working with clients I don't want to work with. And I can say I can really pursue and give benefit of the doubt to clients I really do want to work with. So that's where I'm at now. Is it's becoming more clear to see what projects are going to be successful versus those that are going to be a struggle. So I'm getting better at that, I would say.
Great. Okay. All right. I mean, I've I could keep asking you questions about this till the
Yeah,
cows come home,
you
but
bet.
I know you've got a hard stop, and I want to make sure I'm, being respectful of your time. There are a million different ways you can go with this. So, as we wrap things up, I make a habit on this show of kind of giving you the floor for the last couple minutes, okay, and saying, hey, is there anything I didn't ask you about? Is there anything that we talked about you want to drive home a little further, or just maybe a nugget or leave behind for the audience, the people you're speaking to in particular? Go
Sure.
anywhere you want with it. You can talk about the business, fatherhood, whatever it is you want to do. How do you want to go ahead and close things up to the Power of Man audience, man? Go for it, brother. The floor is yours.
Cool. Let's see. I would say the first thing is what I talked about. If you don't have and maybe I'm preaching to the choir here, but having a strong relationship with your spouse is critical. I continue to believe that. I come from parents that were married for a long time, and anything you can do to be intentional around that is important. It doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your identity or your passions or anything. It means you have to just show up and be intentional. So we found that first Friday breakfast is the best for us. It's hard to be mad over pancakes. We can review budget and like that sort of stuff. It's not a Sunday night where you're stressed to the hilt, right? Kids are around or anything like that. So I would say if you're listening to this, if one or two people just start that practice, I can even send you our agenda and you can work off of that. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Daniel Cheetham, Captain's Club, or Daniel at captainsclub.com. I'll send it to you. But that's something I'm really passionate about as well. So that's one thing. The second piece is if you're a new father, it can be tough, and you do a lot of soul searching of like your value to the family, how you want to be. I've been there before, and again, if you want to connect with me, I'm happy to jam on that with you. The last thing I would say, just count your blessings. It's like an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of ownership. Those things are super important. And I continue just to fall back on that of like, dude, I'm so lucky to clean the dishes tonight. I have family, I'm not in the hospital. I got two working legs. Like I'm happy to clean these dishes, man. How blessed am I? So that mentality has taken me really far in life. Or at least it's taken me where I am in life. So that's a good spot as far as I'm concerned, but no, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the platform here, and hopefully your viewers found this valuable.
I'm sure they did. Honestly, you've got a great story, brother. You really do. It's even bigger and deeper and more enthralling than I had guessed when I first asked you to come on the show. So it
Cool.
was
Hey,
it was
that's a win.
it was great content, man. It really was. And I appreciate you, appreciate your time, appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming on today.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Rory.
Yeah. Uh, Folks, this has been another awesome episode of the Power Man podcast. The reason that we bring powerful men like this on here with powerful messages like this is because we are 100% behind you and your mission to become a better provider, a better protector, a better leader tomorrow than you are today, to become a better father, better husband, and better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason we want that for you is because you matter, you have value, and at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.